Hello and welcome to the Cup of Triathlon podcast. We're brought to you every week by our sponsors, Team Oxygenaddict, who are online triathlon coaching, event-specific training plans, coaching guidance from me, Coach Rob Wilby, and supportive teammates in our private Facebook group. And we're also supported by our patrons who support the show with a monthly donation. So it's the week between Christmas and New Year, and there's not a huge amount of triathlon action going on at the moment, but I wanted to keep on with keeping the podcast coming out weekly. Helen, as you know, if you're a regular listener, is away on her holidays at the moment, so you're just stuck with little old me, I'm afraid. So it's all right, though. We've got some good stuff coming up. We've got a fantastic interview this week with super age grouper Ruth Purbrook, who I'm sure you've heard us talk about before on the show this year. She was third in her age group at the 70.3 World Championships this year, and she won her age group at the Wiesbaden 70.3 European Championships. So Helen did a great interview with her, which is really ace. It's got loads of interesting information in and really good stuff about how top age groupers, combine work and their training routine. So stick around for that. So, a few bits of news that I've managed to find this week for you to update you on. First up, our news are brought to us, sponsored by our patrons this week. And a massive thank you to all of the patrons who've signed up to support the show. The new patrons this week, and I've always done this, but we've got loads of them at the moment coming through. So, thank you very much to Neil Price, Alan Garr, Steve Powell, Niobe Mendez, Darren Shepherd, Carl Cannell, Peter Buckingham, John Overman, Alistair Flett, Ben Walton, Duncan Samwell, Richard Doyle, Paul Slater and Ross Thomas. You guys and girls are super generous. We really appreciate you signing up to support the show. So now, as a special thank you, we've recorded a special patrons only podcast that's going to be coming out in a couple of days' time. It's going to be coming out just before New Year's Eve. It features Joe Skipper talking about his race at Kona. We've got Harry Wiltshire talking about the comments Jan Frodeno made about him after Kona and the controversy surrounding his suspension for 6 months by the ETU following that incident with Javier Gomez. And we've also got some clips and tips from Melinda Elmore, Lucy Gossage and Andy Greenleaf as well. So if you're interested in signing up to become a patron and supporting the show, it's dead simple. You can just click on the link at the side of the page, which is oxygenaddict.com/patrons, and just follow the link there through to the donate page. You can either donate a monthly small amount or you can donate an annual amount, and everything is extremely gratefully received. So let's get on to the news then for this week. The first bit of news that I saw, which made me really giggle: there's a brilliant Hoob video out featuring Jonathan and Ali Brownlee, and featuring who else was on it? Lucy Charles and Olympian swimmer Jack Bennell. They took these guys to Alton Towers. If you haven't seen it, you've got to go and find it. In fact, I'll retweet it on the podcast page. It's hilarious. They basically did a race down the water slides wearing a variety of Hoob outfits, and then they gave them some money to kind of tart their outfits up. So we've got Lucy sticking bits of carbon fiber tape to her wetsuit, and Johnny putting bits of duct tape on his. It's funny. You got to go and watch it. So I was impressed by that. It gave me a right good giggle. There was also news actually featuring Johnny Brownlee, who won the Chevin Chase Fell Race on, I think it was on Boxing Day, which was the fifth year in a row that he's won that, or the 5th year overall that he's won it. And I think I read somewhere that the Brownlees between them have won that race 10 times overall. So that's like a local fell race that happens over in Yorkshire on the day after Christmas Day. So pretty amazing really to be able to turn up to a local fell race and have Olympic medal winners turning up in the fell race with you. So hats off to them for doing it, especially on the day after Christmas Day. And another bit of news that I saw pop up on Twitter was that David McNamee has left the BMC Ethics team and he's signed up with Cervelo. So I don't know at the moment whether they're putting together some kind of pro team or whether this is like an individual sponsorship deal, but along with other sponsors there, he's going to be riding the new P5X. And there's some great quotes from him on his website about having been out and trained with Freddie Van Leerd when Freddie was riding the new P5X. So exciting times for him. He's targeting Kona again this year, and he's one of the names I'm determined to get onto the show in the near future. We've had a couple of near misses with emails and stuff getting an interview lined up with him, so I shall redouble my efforts to go and get him back on the show for you guys to listen to this year. Alright, so moving on to the next section. we've got Coach's Couch this week, which is sponsored by Team Oxygenaddict. The Coach's Couch question is a cracker, and I wanted to bring it out because it's very sort of related to this time of year. And some of you might have seen this. We had a little trial the other day with using Facebook Live and answered this question as a thing on Facebook Live on the Oxygenaddict page. So you might have seen this already, but one of our team members, Anthony de Kirk, sent us a question and said basically, look, I'm going away skiing over Christmas and I want to know the best way to kind of keep training during a skiing holiday. And I thought, well, that's probably something that's going to come up for quite a lot of people who are into triathlon. And there's obviously a big crossover between the snow sports scene in winter and the triathlon scene in the summertime. Now, his question was specific to his situation, which was that he's staying in a resort at the top of the mountain and he couldn't get down to the valley to either do any running or any swimming at all because the lifts all close at 4:30. But he did have a gym in his hotel, so he kind of said, look, what shall I do? Shall I try and follow the training plan still while I'm away skiing and give me some guidance effectively? And my answer to this is, I think the most important thing with a skiing holiday is to remember two things. Firstly, it's why you've booked that holiday in the first place. It's to get away with your family, to have a break from the things that you usually do, and to go skiing or snowboarding. So use the time that you've got there to do the skiing and snowboarding, right? The second thing is, we all know if we've been skiing or snowboarding how incredibly difficult it is on your body. It's really, really challenging in terms of fatiguing your muscles, especially your glutes and your quad muscles. You get absolutely hammered, and the soreness you get after that first day skiing, if you've not done any for a year, is comparable to doing a set of squats. So you've got to be really realistic with yourself about what you're actually going to achieve if you try and follow, as it was in inverted commas, the normal training routine of 2 or 3 bikes and 2 or 3 runs and 2 or 3 swims during the week as well. So you're not going to be able to do any hard work when you're out there, because all of the time when you're not skiing or boarding, your body's going to need that for recovery. So make recovery your focus. Now, that said, if you've got a gym bike available, and Anthony has, you can use that gym bike really wisely by getting a recovery session in. So my advice here is going to be 20 to 30 minutes, 2 or 3 times when you're away. Hop on the gym bike at the end of your skiing or boarding session. Really easy in zone 1, and treat it like a speed skills session. So just by spinning your legs around in a really easy gear, you're going to be promoting blood flow to the muscles, you're going to be promoting recovery, you're going to be probably making yourself feel better for that next day's boarding or skiing anyway, and you are going to get a little bit of aerobic benefit from it as well, but that's not the purpose of it. The purpose of it is to keep that neuromuscular adaptation there, to mean that the movement pattern of cycling is still being reinforced in your body whilst not putting any significant stress on your body's muscular strength system. You don't want to be pushing hard through the pedals, because that's just going to do more damage to legs that are already tired. Now, if you want to run as well, again, I would say limit those runs to 1 or maybe 2 runs during the week. Make them really short on the treadmill and make them really easy, and include frequent walk breaks in them. So I know lots of people feel like if they haven't run for a week, it takes them another whole week to get back into it when they get back, and I think that's the reason for doing it. So when you get back from your holiday, you don't feel as though you've got to spend another week getting back into it, but you're not running for a kind of fitness benefit type effect while you're doing this while you're away. Now, it's unfortunate in Anthony's case. I'd have said that swimming is the one thing that you can keep up during all of this, because you're not going to be getting hammering on your arms and your shoulders and your back muscles when you're out skiing and boarding. So you could have kept up with the usual swim routine, but unfortunately he hasn't got that option there. And as we know, if you're doing an easy to steady swim, that's probably as good as a free massage anyway at the end of the day. So swim is a great one to lace in with skiing and boarding, but otherwise I would say just remember why you're going on the skiing holiday in the first place. Keep some balance in your life, keep to the point where you're keeping your family members happy as well, and make use of the fact you're on a skiing holiday and enjoy those surroundings. Okay, so that was our Coach's Couch section. As I mentioned, it's sponsored by Team Oxygenaddict, which is my online coaching triathlon program. It's closed at the moment, but we're ramping up for our New Year's launch, which is going to happen on the 16th of January. So if you want to find out more about that, just head on over to the website, which is team.oxygenaddict.com. And if you want to find out more, you can click on a link there to join the waiting list. And what we'll do is we'll send you out some information via email that you can read through at your leisure. So yeah, check that out if you want to. Okay, right then, that leads us into this week's interview of the week with Ruth Purbrook, super age grouper. Great interview this. Helen's done a brilliant job. So over to Helen.
Ruth Purbrook, hello and welcome to the Cup of Triathlon podcast. How are you?
Yes, very well, thank you.
Ruth, you're a keen listener of the podcast. I know this because you often share our interviews and things like that, so thank you very much for doing that. So tell us a little bit about how you got into triathlon.
I guess my triathlon journey started back in 2013. I was training for the Berlin Marathon at the time, and someone at work said, "Oh, we're doing this charity triathlon at the London docks." I've been doing a bit of cycling with my husband and thought, yeah, fine, triathlon sounds a bit different. I was a bit bored of just running, so thought I'd give it a go. Sort of really enjoyed it. I think mainly the kind of competitive side. I played quite a lot of hockey at university. One of the things I missed sort of when I came to London was having that kind of something competitive to look forward to and kind of train for. So that was the first one that I did back in August 2013, and I then sort of looked around for, okay, how can I get a little bit more into this? Found my local triathlon club, which is Full On Tri, so anyone in southwest London, come join us, they're great. And went to all their training sessions, found all these people that had done these amazing things, and you know, the amount of people that had done an Ironman or an ultramarathon was incredible. So I found that kind of really helpful to kind of get me to training sessions and find people to really kind of push me on. And it also meant that then that next year I managed to get loads of race entries because lots of people were getting injured or kind of for whatever reason couldn't make a race. So I managed to pick up all these local London like London races. And yeah, I raced loads, like mainly the sort of sprint and standard distance that year, and just absolutely loved it, and started looking at kind of what the next step was. So I kind of started on the standard distance, did that for a couple of years, and then this year has been my first year of doing the 70.3 distance.
You said that you played quite a bit of hockey. Did you swim when you were younger? Did you run when you were younger?
I did a bit of swimming when I was quite young. I think probably between sort of 5 and 10. I have memories of mum driving us to swim club, me chasing my older sister. But when I got to secondary school, I didn't do very much, mainly because my older sister had been there and she had kind of broken all the records. And so I didn't really want to compete as much with her. So yeah, I kind of occasionally would swim, but nothing that seriously. Running wise, again, I've always done a bit of running, but never like that seriously. So I used to kind of get dragged into cross country at school, and then did sort of a bit of running, mainly when sort of my now husband and I'd signed up for the marathon. I did quite a lot, but not as a kind of specific sport, more as a during uni something to stop me getting really fat.
That sounds very much like me. Similarly, I did swim club when I was younger, quit when I was 11, and then but at school they always used to get me to do cross country. I could not sprint to save my life, but it was one of those things that I could keep going when other people couldn't. So yeah, and was Berlin Marathon, was that the kind of start of this, you know, trip into the endurance world?
Yeah, definitely. I think before that, so like my older sister had done quite a few marathons, including some really crazy ones like the Loch Ness Marathon and like a Fell Marathon up in the Lake District. And so part of me was like, I'm going to have to do one at some point. And yeah, like before that, I hadn't really done anything that long. I sort of looked at all these people doing marathons or even some of like the really long bike rides, because at that point I'd kind of started doing a bit of cycling, done a few sportives here and there, but you know, the kind of 50-60 mile ones, I was like, that is more than enough. You know, like enough to kind of eat a bit of cake and not feel too guilty about it, but not so long that you're out kind of all day. So yeah, I'd say Berlin was the kind of the starting point.
So 2014, you were doing all these races, and I guess you were just super excited every time you finished a race. And were you getting better and better with each one?
Yeah, I was definitely getting better, especially when I started. My swim was, way behind everyone. My bike was always quite good, mainly because I've been doing quite a lot of cycling with my husband and just trying to keep up with him. So I think that gave me quite a good base. And then I'd say my run was sort of fairly average. But yeah, kind of towards the end of that year, I think I did a couple of the castle triathlons, and I think I sort of came fifth in a couple of those, and I was like, this is amazing. I was looking at like some of the people that were finishing ahead of me and kind of some of their results and what they'd done. So I was like, great, right, next year my aim is to try and podium at some of these races. And also by this point I'd heard about the kind of like the proper age group racing, and so I really wanted to try and qualify for that as well.
And you did do some age group stuff, didn't you, with British Triathlon in 2015? Did you do 2 races?
Yeah, so I went out and did the European duathlon out in Spain, which was absolutely horrific. It was sort of torrential rain, really cold. Half the field, I think, got sort of pulled off for hypothermia, and it was absolutely miserable. And then I also went out to Chicago for the standard distance world champs, and that was at the kind of point where, again, I'd raced so much that year. I think there was a point over the summer where I was racing kind of every weekend, and kind of got to Chicago, had an all right race but nothing special, and was looking at the times of the people podiuming and just thought, there's no way that I'm going to get my 10k down to that time, or that I can get my swim as fast as some of the people swimming. And I'd done at that point 1 half Ironman. I was like, this seems like a much better distance. So I kind of made up my mind at that point to focus on that for this year.
And when did you join up with your coach, who is Will Clark?
Before Will, I actually had a cycling coach called Tracy, who she really helped bring on my cycling, and kind of got it to a point where I was like, okay, my bike's now quite good. I kind of need to get everything else. And at that time saw this, so that must have been sort of June 2015. Mm-hmm. Is that right? Yeah, I think 2015. And at that point saw on Twitter a note saying, oh, Will Clark is looking for some people to train. So gave him a ring, had a chat. Seemed like we'd work quite well together. Started training with him. It's been sort of about 1.5 years now.
And what appealed for you to train with Will?
Part of it was having a sort of triathlon specific coach who could kind of help with definitely like my swim and run, but I guess like kind of structuring my weeks around all 3 sports. And then like from the chat that I had with him, he clearly just knew so much about the sport. He's gone through the different distances. He's been in it quite a long time, and he just knew so much, and was also I just felt like I got on very well with him. So I was like, okay, this is someone that I can work quite well with. I felt that if I was having the kind of week where work was awful, I could ring him up and be like, look, I'm gonna have to change our training round, and that he would kind of be quite adjustable. And he was also only taking on sort of 5 athletes, so I knew that it would be quite feel more like a kind of one-to-one relationship, which I thought would be quite good. And it's been working really well. So
2016 especially, you've had an incredible season, haven't you? So talk us through, because it started off in April pretty much at Fuerteventura. My
goals for this season were basically see like how much better I can get at that half Ironman distance, try and qualify for the 70.3 world champs, and just kind of see what happens. Fuerteventura was my first race. I didn't really know what to expect at that point. I'd managed to sprain my ankle back in February, so I'd had a bit of time out of running. Was just kind of getting back into the swing of that. But fortunately, Will was going to be out there racing as well, so I knew that he'd be able to kind of give me some race day tips and help cheer me on a bit. Generally, the whole race went sort of reasonably well. To be honest, like the bike part, I'm actually a really terrible descender.
Really?
I'm a bit of a chicken. Yeah. So I was getting passed by everyone going down these hills. Would kind of catch a few of them up back on the uphills, but yeah, so ended up losing actually quite a lot of time on the downhills. I basically went out there with the time in mind from a guy in the club that had done it the year before, and I thought I'd really like to beat his time.
No competitiveness there.
Yeah. But yeah, so kind of got through. So I knew from the swim that I was probably behind quite a few people, past a couple of people on the bike, and thought I was probably somewhere in like the sort of top 3 to 5 age groupers, but I wasn't really sure. Kind of got onto the run, felt reasonably all right on the run actually. And as I was coming sort of towards the end, I saw Will coming sort of running back towards me, obviously having finished his race, and he was like, come on, like you're in first age group place, like just keep going, you're nearly there. Put on a bit of a sprint at the end. So yes, kind of came across as first age grouper. I was like, great, like that was quite good for the first race of the season. But it was really nice to kind of have him there and to be able to kind of show, you know, we'd had solid sort of 6-7 months of training by that point, and see kind of how far I'd come from the first one that I did back at the Shanty Castle.
And where had you, under Will then, where had you made the biggest improvements, would you say?
Definitely the swim. I think I took, between sort of Shanty and Fuerteventura, I think I took sort of 6 or 7 minutes off my swim.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, so the big question is, how?
The sort of stuff that people talk about quite a lot. So a lot of it was consistency. I'd gone from doing maybe 2 club swims a week, where we were doing probably about 2k of swimming, to doing probably, but over that winter I think he had me doing about 4 or 5 swims a week, and most of my sets were probably at least 3.5k. So I kind of increased my volume a lot. But within that, he had me doing a lot of technique stuff. I spent a weekend with him where he basically just watched me swim and was like, no, we're going to do this drill because you're doing this slightly wrong. So like the weekend that I went up and spent with him, he made like a few tweaks to what I was doing. I don't know, it took something like 6 or 7 seconds off my kind of CSS pace of what I was swimming my hundreds in. So I was like, okay,
that's
this really
insane.
works.
In a weekend. That's great.
Yeah.
How many people would love to say that?
Yeah, I mean, it probably shows quite what my technique was like beforehand. But yeah, so I'd say like the swim was the main part that he has helped improve. But I think like one of the things I'm seeing now is, again, I think from the kind of consistency over the season, like my running is now starting to, I guess, you know, like my training sessions are feeling quite good with the running. So I think that's something that next year I'll start to see a lot more improvements. Like hopefully if I can stop spraining my ankle and put together some consistent running.
Have you sprained it a number of times?
Yeah, I keep, my parents live up in the Lake District, so I always get a bit carried away when I go up and see them and go on some nice fun fell run. So I've had a couple of sprains this year of just trying to run a bit fast downhill and completely going over on it.
Oh no. See, that's what Rob always says, you know, oh Helen, if you're going to go and do that cross country, you be careful. Yeah, it's just fun, isn't it? Exactly, it's just fun.
Yeah.
So
and it's so beautiful up there.
Exactly. Why wouldn't you want to do that? You wouldn't want to go and, you know, treadmill all the fells. Easy.
Exactly. Definitely fells.
So then May, right, going into Mallorca 70.3, did you think there, right, I know what I want to do, I want to be first age grouper again?
Yeah, so Mallorca 70.3 was my first chance to qualify. So I obviously was aiming to win my age group. I had my backup race because I knew that Mallorca's like one of the biggest 70.3s. I'd had a look at some of the girls in my age group competing, and I knew it was going to be quite tough. But there was like a really good group from the club out there. They'd actually had a training camp, so I knew there was going to be some really good support on the course. And yeah, kind of having got out there on the Wednesday night, the weather was lovely. Went for this nice like recce of the swim course. It was like flat seas, and I was like, this is going to be so nice. Can't wait to get out on these roads and do the race. And then wake up race day morning, and it was absolutely horrific. I'm sure most people that know someone that did it has heard about how bad the conditions were. Sort of set out on the swim, and I think probably must have been about 10 minutes in, I nearly turned over to get pulled out, because I felt a couple of sort of things on my face, and I was like, what is that? And suddenly realised there was all these jellyfish everywhere, and I just kept getting stung, and I was like, this is awful. What am I doing here? Like, this racing's meant to be fun, and this is just miserable. But by that point, I was kind of almost halfway round, and was like, well, it's going to take me as long to get back through all these jellyfish, so I might as well keep swimming. And actually somehow it made me swim faster, because I managed to get a new swim PB on that course. I think it's just sort of swimming away from the jellyfish. Then kind of got out onto the bike, and like the bike, again, just miserable. That first sort of 40k was like into the headwind, really quite cold. Then had the climb, which was actually quite nice, because I got quite warm, was managing to like overtake some people. And by this point, 'cause when I'd been running through transition, I'd heard them sort of shouting out some of the positions, and I knew at this point I'd gone past the two girls that were ahead of me. So I was like, okay, now I'm in like first age group, I've just got to hold it on. Was then going down the descent, and as I said before, terrible descender. And because it was so horrifically wet, and like pretty much every corner there was someone sliding off their bike, so I was going pretty gingerly down there, and got overtaken by this one girl. I was like, right, okay, I've just got to try and catch her up now. But it was so cold coming down. Obviously in your tiny little tri-suit, it was so cold and wet. And then the rest of it, getting back into Mallorca, it was all quite flat, so it was quite hard to actually, I was trying to push quite hard to just warm up. I spent a good amount of time just still freezing. And then coming out into the run, I had like all the Tri Club there supporting. It was really, really great. And I managed to catch this girl just after the first lap. So again, then I was like, right, I've just got to keep going now. But one of the things I hadn't really taken into consideration is we had one of the rolling starts, and I just kind of assumed, she must have started somewhere near me, but she must have actually started quite far back. So I think I crossed the line maybe like a minute and a half ahead of her, but then when I looked at the timings, I was only 6 seconds ahead of her, and she was also in my age group.
That is the tricky thing, isn't it, about the rolling starts?
Yeah. So there I was, kind of cruising around my second lap, right, I've put some good distance there now. And like thankfully put on a sprint at the end, because there was this quite old guy that came past me, and I was like, there's no way I'm going to let him beat me. Like, he must have been in his like late 60s. It's like, no chance. So thank God he did. Otherwise, I might have just cruised to the end and she would have beaten me.
That would have been absolutely gutting, because you wouldn't have found out till you would have thought, yes, I've got it. And then someone would have been like, yeah, no, you messed up there.
No. Exactly. But yeah, I kind of, that was the sort of race that I look back on now, like it was so miserable, but it was one of those ones that I think it played definitely more to the people that were from England and are used to dealing with that kind of weather.
That obviously got your place at the World Championships in Australia. You won your age group in Wiesbaden on the way, so I guess you were pretty confident going to Australia.
Yeah, I went out to Australia definitely wanting to podium, kind of hoping that I could, win it, to be honest, but also knowing that there's a whole load of athletes from America and Australia that, have obviously not really had the chance to race. And it's always very difficult to kind of compare some of the times given how different the courses are. But yeah, I kind of got out there, I was feeling pretty good, had like a good taper, I travelled quite well. I was like a bit nervous about the sea swim, obviously with the swim being my weakest. And again, like it started out really flat that morning. Like we watched all the pros go out and we're like, yeah, it looks lovely. By the time it got, because I was the final wave that went, and it was a little bit choppier. Like, nothing terrible. I think it was more just having so many people in the water. So I actually found the swim really quite tough. Got out and had like the longest transition in the world. I think it must have been at least a kilometre long.
Really?
And it was just so, yeah, it was, so you're kind of running through that like, oh, for God's sake, I'm feeling absolutely knackered from the swim. Where is my bike? Trying to find it. I have to say, I think it's probably one of the worst laid out transitions that I've been at, just because they tried to cram so many people in. But yeah, I kind of got out onto the bike, and I knew that I was way back at this point. You know, I'd seen so many of the girls ahead of me from my age group in the swim. But then when we were out on the bike, you obviously have no idea really who's in your age group or not. So I was like, right, I've just got to try and overtake as many girls as possible. And yeah, so kind of just sort of went for it a bit on the bike, was overtaking quite a few people. There was quite a lot of drafting going on. I think like because again, like, there were just so many people racing, and the whole like the first out and back bit was all on the motorway. So there were all these like really quite big groups sort of forming and going. So I was also trying really hard to not get caught up with them, because I can't come out here and get a sort of a penalty for anything. That would just be heartbreaking.
That'd be dreadful.
Yeah. So, but at the same, it was making me quite annoyed seeing all these groups drafting. So like But anyway, I think it helped kind of push me on a bit, and kind of got to the point where I was like, okay, I'm not seeing that many girls now, so I must have sort of ridden my way up reasonably well. Got through the little hilly bit, which was really quite fun actually. I quite enjoyed that bit. And then heading back to the run, I was like, right, I was probably pushing a bit harder than ideally wanted to on the bike, but let's just try and hang on for the run. Fortunately, I wasn't too hot or anything. And again, people have been talking about this hill on the run. I was like, no, like I've seen where we are by the coast, it's all flat. And I hadn't actually really recce'd the run course properly, thinking, you know, it's just kind of the run course, how bad can it be? And actually that first, there's like this one hill that's kind of immediately as you come out of transition. I mean, if you compare it to say the Exmoor course, like it's not a hill, but because everything else was so flat, and because you had to do it sort of 4 times, because like up, down, and then up, down again. And it was one of those ones that just really just immediately took it out your legs. So I was like, oh God, now I've got to try and hang on for this whole half marathon. And saw on that loop, because it was 2 laps, so you could kind of see quite easily where you were if you could sort of catch people's bibs. And I saw this one girl quite far ahead who was in my age group, so I was like, okay, she must be sort of winning. I then didn't see anyone else until this girl came absolutely flying past me, and I was like, oh my God, who is this girl?
You think no?
I was like, oh no. And then I was like, can I keep on her feet? And I was like, no, like absolutely not. By this point I was starting to kind of fade a little bit, so I was like, right, she's gone, let's just keep going, try and finish it. And yeah, and I have to like that run atmosphere was brilliant. Like there were so many people all down the run course, and it was just, yeah, so that made it pretty cool. And then sort of finishing and being able to go straight out onto the beach, and they gave you this nice little pot of ice cream and just kind of like chill on the beach. I was like, this is how I'd like to end all of my races. Sat in the sunshine on an Australian beach. Initially I was pretty disappointed. I'd really hoped to ideally win, but looking at the 2 girls that beat me, I was like, actually, like one of them was this it was an American girl who was on the like Olympic swimming team, so I think she beat my swim by about 8 minutes.
Wow.
It's like, right, can't compete with that. And then the other girl, I think it was Imogen, who I think was just turned pro. So again, she's just amazing. I've kind of followed her a little bit, and yeah, she's been doing really, really well. So kind of on reflection now, I look back and I think, yeah, actually, first kind of year of doing 70.3 distance, you know, to kind of get out to the Worlds and then to kind of podium, like I'll give myself a bit of a break and be quite happy with it. But
I think so.
More to be done.
And I imagine you had a very proud coach as well.
Yeah, he was pretty happy. But again, it's nice to be able to kind of go back to him and say, yeah, actually, everything you're doing has been working. But yeah, that's one of the nice things I think about having that coach that you have that good relationship with, because I can kind of hear that he gets really excited about it as well.
What are the plans then for next year? Are you thinking of going pro?
As I got to the end of this year, I was thinking about going pro. I actually submitted an application and they came back and said, no, sorry, you're not quite there yet. Which, again, at the time I was pretty disappointed. But having kind of, again, reflected on it, I think it's going to be a kind of a massive blessing in disguise. I think it gives me another year to, make all those improvements that I think I can still make. Rather than going into the pro field and being one of those girls that's, right off the back and is the one that's getting beaten by the good age groupers. It gives me another year to kind of get better. And because of that, I am going to do a full Ironman and join the complete crazy squad, and try and qualify for Kona and do that as an age grouper, hopefully.
I think that sounds like a decent goal. So which Ironman are you aiming for?
I have entered Lanzarote. I thought, why not do a really easy flat one?
I don't think there are any easy Ironman. Yeah, but yeah, it's very difficult.
Because the bike's kind of my strength, I wanted one where there doesn't seem to be as much drafting. And I know the roads reasonably well from having done a couple of training camps there. And it's also quite early, so it kind of lets me plan out my year depending on the result from that. I think with the biking, it's, I wouldn't say I'm the best bike. I won't go to these races and be the girl that's getting that strongest, the fastest bike split. But I think just because I've managed to build some good endurance from sort of chasing my husband around on the bike, it means I think that it doesn't necessarily take as much out of me as it does from other people.
And so what's the plan to turn you from a terrible descender, as you say, to a good descender for next year?
Step number one is I think Will's trying to organise a kind of mountain bike weekend for us, so I can try a bit of that. And I just, I'm going to try and go out a bit more with my husband and some of his team cycling, and just try and sort of just follow their lines a bit, because a lot of it, I know it's all in my head. I basically had a really stupid crash out in France a couple of years ago where I didn't even hurt anything that badly, but it just completely freaked me out about corners. So yeah, I think it's just practice. I think there's a nice little hill in Richmond Park that is just going to be on my plan to go back and just keep doing, get a good feel for the bike, and just try and stop my head thinking that I'm about to fall off.
I think that sounds very sensible, because I think you might need some good descending in Lanzarote.
Definitely, yeah.
Brilliant. Well, Ruth, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for your time, and really good luck for this coming season.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's been great to chat.
All right, fantastic stuff there. Love that interview. Great work, Hells. If you're listening over there in Canada, I hope you're having a brilliant holiday. And so, right, that pretty much brings us to the end of the last episode of the Cup of Tri podcast of this year. And here's a little bit of a bombshell for you all. It's actually going to be the last episode of the Cup of Tri Triathlon podcast ever. Now, you don't need to worry. We're not disappearing, but we are rebranding. We've sat down and had a discussion. And from the 1st of January, we're going to be relaunching our podcast as the Oxygenaddict Triathlon podcast. Lots of different reasons behind it, but mainly it's a business marketing decision by some very smart people that I've sat down and worked with, who've said, look, it's in everybody's interests here to make the podcast under the same brand and the same umbrella as all the other stuff that you're doing. So we are going to be relaunching as the Oxygenaddict Triathlon podcast on the 1st of January. Nothing's going to change. It's going to be the same format. It's going to be me and Helen still. Nothing's going to change by way of the interviews. It's simply a title change. But it does mean that things are going to be changing on Twitter and things are going to be changing on Facebook. The website's still going to be the same, except you're probably going to see our podcast is going to be running off the front page of the Oxygenaddict website, so it's going to draw it all together. And it's, long story short, it's saving us from getting a whole other new domain name for the podcast and a whole new website and things in the background. It was easier to rebrand it as the Oxygenaddict website and the Oxygenaddict podcast, and it's all in the same place. So you guys know who I am. If you've listened a lot, you guys know who Helen is. You know that we're doing this stuff and nothing's going to change other than the title. So we'll be sending out some tweets tweets and some Facebook messages if you've liked us on Facebook and if you followed us on Twitter. We're just basically going to change the name of the account. So instead of tweeting at Cup of Tri, you're going to be tweeting a different name. But if you follow us already on there, then we're going to tell you what the new name is anyway. And after a couple of weeks, my guess is everyone's going to have forgotten it was ever called Cup of Tri, and it's going to switch over to becoming the Oxygenaddict Triathlon podcast full time. But listen, thank you all so much for being listeners this year. Helen and I sat down a couple of weeks ago and had a chat about this, and what started as a little passionate project for us about trying to get inspirational stories about people and about triathlon out there has grown into this insane project now that we just love. We're getting to the point where we're getting approached by people to sponsor the show, so you'll be seeing some more sponsors in the new year, and it's just been brilliant. We're starting to make part of a living from doing something that we really, really loved, and we were doing for free anyway. And if you've signed up to support us as a patron, again, super thanks for that. We can't tell you how much we appreciate you supporting the work we do, and we're dedicated to keeping on bringing you stories of inspiration and triathlon brilliance throughout the next year and hopefully many years to come. So I hope this has been an enjoyable podcast for you. I hope you've managed to get yourselves out and have a long run or a long bike ride as you've been listening to this. If you have been doing, give yourself a pat on the back for being one of the few people who's got out and done some training over the Christmas and New Year period. And when you get yourself home, sit down with a pad of paper and write down what you want to achieve out of this year. And whether that's a triathlon goal, whether it's a goal for life in general, get yourself something set out that you want to achieve. And if you want to send us a tweet or a Facebook message telling us what that is, we would love to help broadcast people's New Year's resolutions, especially if they are related to triathlon. So that's it. That is all for this year's show. I hope you guys have a fantastic New Year's Eve and New Year, and we will be back as the Oxygenaddict Triathlon podcast from the 1st of January. Oh, one last thing to mention. We've said this before, if you sign up to be a patron before the 31st of December, we're going to send you out a special thank you, a special surprise in the new year. So you've got a couple of days yet to get that in. If not, you'll still have access to the patrons only podcast after the 31st of December, but we're only going to send out our special surprise thank you gift to the people who've signed up by the 31st of December. So if you're thinking about it and you're on the fence and you've meant to get round, you maybe have got a couple of days to get this in before the wire. If you're in before midnight on the 31st of December, then we'll be sending it out to you. So listen, have a great new year, have a great training and racing week, be safe, stay off the ice, and more than anything, thank you so much for listening to the podcast. Until next week, when Helen, my co-host, will be joining me. She will be Helen Murray. I've been Coach Rob Wilby, and you've been listening to the last episode ever of the Cup of Tri Triathlon podcast, and you've been given notification we're going to become the Oxygenaddict Triathlon podcast. Cheers, everybody.